This program is presented by University of California Television. Like what you learn? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the latest UCTV programs.
Welcome to Politics Theater. I'm the Politics Theater director, Matt Ryan. Tonight, we are celebrating the final in our Focus on the Editor series. There's a new quarterly series coming to the Car Sequel. Each quarter, we're going to bring in different type of perspective of film, genres, or in this case, editors. So we're really excited. Tonight, we're glad to have the editor from movies such as Seeking a Friend from the End of the World, 50/50, the true life documentary, This Is the End, and of course, Neighbors, and the soon-to-be-released The Interview with Seth Rogen and James Franco. So you've seen the footage of this movie hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Does it still make you laugh?
It does, yeah, it does. I was sitting in for like 10 minutes or so, and I was like, oh man, I haven't seen this in front to back in a while. And yeah, it's still funny. Like ass juice, like it's still funny to me. Like just the name is still funny to me. The Bros Before Hoes party is still, that one still works really, really well. I was amazed by that. Yeah, still making me laugh.
Is that a sign, especially for editing comedies, if it can keep you laughing after you're editing it in the room for hundreds and hundreds of days and time, is that like that joke should stay?
Yes.
And conversely, if you don't like it, it's just like suddenly after 5 times, you're, oh, it's not.
Yeah, I don't know. Nah, not necessarily. There's some jokes I didn't. I'm trying to think. Having said that, I'm trying to think of a joke that I hated that stayed in the movie. But there's a lot of jokes that I loved that both Nick and I loved that left the movie because audiences didn't like it. So yeah, it works both ways. But yeah, the by and large rule is if it's still making us laugh day after day after day, then it's a keeper.
Although sometimes you might have to cut it because of it doesn't fit in the story, or it just like it's a great bit. Yeah. But you know, you have to get rid of it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But I mean, I think it's on the DVD. There's a whole Civil War. You know, when Zach mentions it, you know, like we burned the house down with the fireworks. You know, that was actually one of the opening scenes of the movie. Was, you know, after we introduce Seth and Rose's character, we go and hang out with the frat and introduce all the guys. There was this really elaborate tracking shot that follows Zach through every room in the fraternity, and you know he picks up an item from Scooney, from Ass Juice, from oh God, I've forgotten the character's name. I'm totally in another movie. But each one of the characters, and then you know they go out and meet the guy that all these items that he's collected, they turn over to the guy that sells them fireworks. And so then they have this big Civil War reenactment on their front lawn where they are shooting fireworks out of pledges at each other like cannons. They're just kind of lined up on the lawn. You know, it was a good bit and it was funny. We put it in front of an audience and it just died. And it didn't fit the story. Like, it's like, okay, the story's about Seth and Rose, so.
Right,
you know.
and then that's, so you students, please don't do that. But if you do it, invite me, because I kind of want to see that. So let's go back to the beginning, before we get deep into the movie. How did you get involved in the film? That's just the obvious.
How did I get involved in Neighbors?
How did you start?
Oh my God. Mainly Seth and Evan. I had just worked with them on This Is the End, and so they're producers of this movie, and Nick Stoller he was lining this one up. He wanted to do something totally different. He'd just come off of, 5-year engagement?
5-year engagement,
Yeah.
Jason Segel and
Yeah,
Emily
I
Blunt.
think that's right. Yeah. And so he really wanted, he wanted to totally change things up. He wanted to work with a new DP, a new editor, just do something completely out of character from any of his other movies. And so, we set up a meeting, and he and I hit it off, and turned into that, basically.
And that seems very important because you have to be in sync with the director of all people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you guys are not on the same page, A,
Yeah.
you're not going to get hired.
Yeah.
Or B, you won't keep the job.
Correct. Or sometimes you don't get along and you still keep the job.
So, all right, so you started with Seth, and so Seth and obviously felt comfortable with you, and Evan felt comfortable with you, brought you in to meet this Nick, and that's how it kind of all...
That happened, and it's all kind of intertwined. Like, I did Foot This Way with Jody Hill, who I went to film school with. His follow-up was Observe and Report with starring Seth, because Seth was a huge fan of Foot This Way. And so we did Observe and Report at Warner Brothers, and there was this other movie that had been kind of floating around, and I was doing, after Observe, I can't remember the chronology of the movies I did, but I did a couple of little tiny films, but there was this other one that made the blacklist, which that's something that I'm always doing, is like hustling and reading scripts and knowing, it's good to know what's out there. And so at the time it was called I'm With Cancer, and that turned into be 50-50 with Levine. And so I called in a favor from Jody. I was like, Jody, hey, Seth is producing this movie called I'm With Cancer. Like, can you get me a meeting? And I didn't know Seth that well at the time. And Jody's like, dude, sure, man. I'll call. And he called him up. I met with, I had a meeting with Levine like within a week. Wow. And he and I hit it off. And actually, I just remembered our meeting. It was at Sony. And I met him there was a Coffee Bean on the Sony lot. And I met him there, and oddly enough, it hailed actually that day in Culver City. But behind Levine on the TV, there was an ad for, what is that? It's what is that thing? It's the muscle building thing, the shake weight. Oh. So behind him on the monitor, there was like this 15-minute commercial for the shake weight, and Levine's talking to me about the story, and I'm totally into it. And every time I glance up, there's this like shake weight going like this in the background. And I said, dude, I'm sorry, man. I'm listening to what you're saying, but you got to see this. And he and I hit it off. It was just one of those weird chemistry things. And then, from 50-50 turned into this is the end, and there you go.
So it seems like, so being in sync with the editor, I mean, the director is a brilliant thing. Also, having the same vision of the script.
Yes.
So that helps. So let's talk a little about that. So you have a script, so you read a script, you like the movie, right. And then you take a movie that has a lot of improv.
I heard you introing Neighbors, so I knew this was coming.
So how does that affect you in the editing room? Because if you have a straight script, it must be easier in some ways to edit when you know exactly the script is followed. At the same time, a little more creative fun when they have improv.
Yeah, yes and no. It's harder. It's a lot harder. Comedies are number one, a lot harder. Improv comedies are even harder than that. Mainly because with a comedy, you've typically got maybe 12 to 15 times the footage, maybe even more, than you would with a drama. So, whereas a drama might shoot, all day, and then you get a total of 2 hours at the end of the day, an improv comedy, they'll shoot all day, and you've got 15 hours of footage, and that somehow or another you got to watch or at least go through, be familiar with, and so forth. So it's, it's a catch-22. You can be really creative, but there's so much footage.
And don't you have to worry about the scene, because if it takes it too far away from the initial scene, it could throw off the movie, like you just mentioned, the Civil War.
Yeah.
Is that you're the first one who cuts that together, or how does that decision, and then the director will come in and look with you? And
yeah, typically how it's worked is, we'll shoot, and oddly enough, I have a week after they finish shooting to present the assembly cut, which the assembly cut is everything. I usually try to go by the script, and if there's jokes or bits in there that are, when I'm watching, I'm like, oh, that's a good joke, that's a good bit, I'll put that bit in there even if it's off script. And sometimes the scene will be the scene plus like 5 bits that are funny, really funny, to me at the time anyway, but and then you present it, and the director will come in and you watch this behemoth of a movie that's like 4 hours, maybe 4.5, something like that, but yeah, front to back.
If you're laughing straight through, you have a hit.
If you're laughing for 4.5, that's never happened. For 4.5 hours, never happened.
So we'll talk a little some of the specific scenes. My favorite, I love the, because I can relate to the old man trying to be cool, the scene where Seth and Rose go to the party the first time. To be cool. Yeah. So how do you approach something like that? Because it's multiple points of view. You have Seth's point of view, Rose. Right. How does that, and when you first get the footage, is that in the script, or you have to kind of piece together that scene?
That's a good question. It's pretty much there. The point of view is there. Like that's the kind of consistent thing, is that Nick has given them the point of view. Like, always keep in mind, let's try this bit, I'll throw out lines and stuff like that, but he's already given them the point of view that they need to keep in mind. And they'll diverge here and there, but it's always there. So, yeah.
Is that something where the director will say, all right, shoot it like the script for the take I need, and then try something else? Or is it just...
Yeah. they'll shoot it, and then they'll keep the camera rolling, and then they'll shoot it again, and they'll keep the camera rolling, and then they'll shoot it again he'll throw out 4 different lines, and then we'll keep the camera rolling, and it's like 40-minute takes.
Oh, jeez. Which means you're clipping a long time. So sounds like editing comedy is much longer than a drama. Just the amount of time you have to spend.
You got to really work fast, because you're given the same amount of time as any other movie, but again, 15 times the footage. So it's really difficult. Yeah.
We were talking a little back in the lobby, the great fight scene at the end.
Okay.
How much of that was scripted, improv, or choreographed together between the two?
Interesting. Honestly, that fight was originally a lot shorter. They kind of fought only in the hallway, and we had an opportunity to get some additional photography, and so we took it. And part of that was the air. I think there was one additional airbag. When he catches it with the broom, and then the other part was this fight sequence where we're like, they should really fight more, because everybody, that was the consistent thing that we got from like 2 or 3 early test screenings, was you got this build-up between Seth and Zach, that they should fight, and they kind of did fight, but it was so short and brief. We were like, okay, we need to really beef that up. And so it became very scripted and choreographed in that additional photography, but originally it was only in that little hallway. Everything inside the room with the dildo, the trampoline, the ceiling fan, that was kind of an add-on. There was like 4 other things that they crashed into or used in the room that we ended up cutting out because then the fight was too long. So
it's interesting because we talked a little about, during the screening, how important in comedy, especially your timing, the setup, the payoff.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had the great setup, the whole battle between the whole movie, but the payoff just didn't hit.
Yeah, it just kind of, it happened, but and then it was done. So everybody wanted like a little more, like a little something, and that fight scene worked pretty well, I hope. Yeah?
Do you guys think it worked well?
Thanks.
It's also great because you get to almost you're also meshing genres together because you have a great comedy bit, but now you have an action bit. So is that something as an editor you kind of have fun with when you get to kind of merge, not just doing one straight style or?
Totally, yeah. It was kind of, I've done that for a number of films, but I mean, the interview, when that comes out, there's a lot of action in that. And that was amazing to cut. Like we have a tank helicopter fight sequence, so that was kind of awesome. But yeah.
And when you think of Seth Rogen, you think of a tank helicopter sequence.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah, every time.
Every time. I mean, that was, So everybody know the movie's about trying to assassinate the North Korean leader?
Well, I mean, it starts out with just an interview with Kim Jong-un, and then it morphs into the CIA recruiting Seth and Franco to assassinate Kim Jong-un, and then wackiness ensues.
So I guess you're excited about the controversy that North Korea's not happy with it because it's only going to help your ticket sales.
Oh, well, totally. Yeah, it's the best free press we could ever possibly imagine. And what's nuts is we've been, like all through the movie, we keep tabs on what's happening in North Korea, with like, oh, Kim did this today, Kim did that today, and whatever. And that, he does some crazy like plain and simple. And so none of the controversy was surprising at all when it kind of blew up when the trailer came out, so we were all like, yeah, it sounds about right.
So working with, now you've worked with Seth, we talked about 5 times, wow. 5 different films. So now you're just in sync more? You kind of know what footage you're going to get from him, what he likes, what...
Pretty much. Yeah.
So that helps. This is one of the reasons.
There's still a few surprises, but I mean, overall, definitely in sync, You're like, all right, this is great. I know I hate to categorize someone as having a bag of tricks, but, you start to see patterns, and Seth has a bag of tricks, and they're a great bag of tricks. So I kind of know what his mannerisms are at this point, and like, okay, he's probably going to take advantage of this joke, and oh yeah, sure enough, he did. Great, that's awesome.
And when you read the script, he'll deliver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's going to do it. Talking a little about, so now you have a movie like Neighbors, and we'll go into some of your other work, which I'm very excited to talk about. You've got Seth, who is great, funny, comedic, but you also have to balance Rose Byrne.
Right.
So was ever concerned, like, can she keep up? Like when you first read the script, and then of course they were great together. Right. And same thing with Zach. Did you have anything when you read the script that maybe?
Oh yeah, when I read the script, I was like, man, I hope they cast somebody that can hold her own. That was a huge concern, I think, when I originally read it. I'm like, man, we need somebody good. And I heard they were looking at Rose, and at the time, I didn't know enough of her work to really gauge, whether she'd be capable or not. And then, day one of dailies came in, and man, it was like smooth sailing.
And I'm assuming, obviously, it's hard to imagine if you had a not as good as actress, that changes your whole editing process because you got to cut her out or change.
Well, you have to. I mean, you have to cut. There's so much to balance because you have to cut for. Story, and then the rhythm of your actors is huge, plays huge into how you're cutting the comedy of it. So if you've got someone that is on a totally different rhythm than everyone else, you've got to make you've got to make the overall adjustment to the whole scene. You can't just cut that one person, otherwise it's going to be, you know, very unbalanced.
And it sounds like that's where editing can make or break a movie. When you have the imbalance, you can save it,
right,
or take it the other way.
Yeah, it can make an actor or an actress look terrible or awesome, you know, by doing that. And you just got to find the overall rhythm.
But you were grateful for this one because Zach and Rose delivered for you.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Let's go. All right, so we're going to talk a little about This Is the End, a movie that we actually showcased at UC Santa Barbara.
No way.
As I mentioned in the documentary. So my first question we talked about is, why Danny McBride the cannibal?
Why?
And why did I think obviously?
Because it was obvious from the very beginning. It was, I think that was one of the earliest concepts, was to have Danny as a cannibal. Like, okay, well, I remember they were kind of, when was that? I had run into the guys and they were talking about story ideas, and that was one of the ideas. It's like, oh, and then Danny should definitely eat somebody. Like, and then and then they kind of backtracked it from there to like, okay, well, how would he get to that point? And that's what happened.
And I assume Danny was like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was like, "Oh yeah, this is a good idea, guys. Let's do this."
Now we talked about Rose and Zach. You weren't sure they delivered, but you weren't sure. But you knew all these guys had the comedic timing.
Oh yeah.
So did you go into that a little like, all right, I know they can deliver everything I need.
Totally.
And it was also an interesting mesh of genre. It starts as a comedy parody,
right,
goes into this horror. Was that kind of appealing to you? Kind of like,
oh yeah,
mixing the genre in the middle of the film.
Mm-hmm. It was that was one of the most appealing things about it, was the just the mix, and for what they were saying was this like, I guess, studio comedy. No studio comedy turns into what that turned into. So yeah, it was definitely appealing. It was totally different than. I was trying to put it in a reference of anything. I'm like, nope, I can't think of anything. It starts one way, goes totally different way. I mean, you get ahead, you think you know what's going to happen, and sometimes you're right on the money. Like you knew Jonah was going to become possessed at some point, but you're like, oh, well, I got to stick around and see that.
Yes, I like the way it was shot and edited, the homage to The Exorcist.
Yes, yes. Very purposefully, yeah.
So let's go back. All right, so how did you get into editing? Let's go back to your earliest days.
Spite. That would be mostly how I got into editing. I went to, at the time, it wasn't part of University of North Carolina's system. It was just a film. It was it was part of an art school, and they'd opened the film program. I went there, and the first 2 years, it's a very hands-on school, or at the time it was. And so the first 2 years, you do everything. You write, you direct, you produce, you shoot, you edit. That's about all of it. And so you really get your hands, dirty with everything. And at the end of the second year, you basically, you can elect, you kind of rank your choice of what concentration you want to go into. Like, oh, I want to direct. And I was up against some really hard competition. Like David Green was in my class. Mm-hmm. And some really, really talented guys for directing. And I was acing all my directing courses and everything. Editing, I was making like C's, which is kind of like, that's failing in an art school, especially. Like, you make a C, you're like, oh, you suck. So I, of course, then ranked my concentrations as directing, writing, shooting, producing, and then editing last. And the results come out like 2 days later. You check the board. It's like, it sounds really old school. You go check the bored, like where did I land? Where did I land? And boom, I'm in editing. So I'm like, what is this? Like, I've been making C's this whole time. Well, what the hell? So I go and I talk to my, I guess, for lack of a better term, my mentor, professor mentor, and she was a little flighty, and she and I didn't get along the best as that relationship. And so I asked her, I'm like, what gives? Why am I in editing? And she was never able to provide me a really straight answer on that. What are you talking about? Well, editing one, and just like, don't at me. Just tell me, like, you got some stiff competition, dude. There's 10 directors that are awesome, and then there's you. So, like that answer I could take, but all I got was so, I was like, all right, fine. I just kind of had it with her, and I said, all right, well, I'll take to editing. I'll be the best editor that comes out of the school forever. Like, I'll be better than you. I'll be better. I really laid into her, and it was really not kind what I said, but it was really out of spite that I took to it. And the last 2 years, I just really, really took to it. And I went from watching like 4 hours of movies a week to 10 hours of movies a week, and just studying and reading. I read Walter Murch's book like 3 times and discovered he's crazy, but still a good editor. I love that he puts little cutouts, audience members in front of his monitor. It's in the book, I swear. And I was like, I read that and I'm like, that is really interesting. I'm never going to do that. And so, yeah, that mainly out of spite. That's how I got into it. And then after film school, I was the first one to get a job in cutting industrials in Raleigh, North Carolina. And David Green called me up about 9 months after graduation and said, hey, I did this movie, George Washington, you want to like come and edit? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I just got fired. So I was drawing unemployment while cutting George Washington.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was great. And then
and did you start on film, or did you go straight to digital?
Always digital. Yeah, I cut on actual film one time in film school. And from there it was all, we did George Washington on Final Cut Pro 1.2.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So you're happier now with the advancement in the software?
Oh, yeah.
Because you're on Avid, too.
Avid, yeah. Definitely.
All right, I'm having a ball, but I want you guys to have a ball. So let's get some awesome questions.
Can you talk about the, sort of like the theatrical and DVD cuts? Are they made sort of the same time? When you have those extended versions, what do you feel as an editor? Which one do you feel is the film? I mean, are they both kind of the thing? Or the
film is what is released in the theater. Always. Like, I was so glad that, I don't know, did Neighbors come out with an extend? No, I don't think it did.
I don't believe, no, I don't think
we
so.
had extra stuff on on extras, like the Civil War thing. I think that's an extra. But, for the most part, I'm working with guys now that don't, they're like, well, this is what's in the theater, that's what we went to all the trouble, to release. We tested for that version, and we edited for that version. The extended stuff is like, it's really tedious. I mean, if you've seen some of the, like, I can't even watch the extra long Superbad. It's like really terrible. But the theatrical version is still really holds up. It's great. So, yeah, Nick doesn't like it. I don't like it. Seth doesn't like the extended DVD thing. It's kind of weird and pointless.
Well, I have one, so maybe I'll get it for you. It seems when it comes to comedy, obviously, is very tough timing. 1 second you can be off, and it ruins the shot. But it seems to get always or consistently ignored by the Academy. Is there any reason you feel like they will not, let alone Best Picture, but it's definitely editing, they will not look at
Like
comedy.
recognize an actual comedy that makes people laugh.
Yes, and then and say that's actually the editor did a great job. He should be nominated.
That's why comedies are hard. No, I don't know why that is. You know, they classify odd things as comedy. Like last year, American Hustle classified as a comedy. Not a comedy. It's a drama with some funny stuff. That one was really baffling. Musical. What was the Inside Llewyn Davis musical? How is that a musical? It's a good movie, not a musical. Comedy musical, Llewyn Davis. That's my first choice. I'm a little. That's a touchy subject with me on that one, because I mean, true. The comedies that we're making aren't exactly highbrow. Like, I would not classify Neighbors as highbrow comedy, but it's genuinely fun. It's genuinely entertaining. You get great laughs out of it. It's not the same cookie cutter that's getting just factoried out. I don't have any examples right now, and I don't want to put other movies down, but there are I will. Paul Blart 2. Sorry, that movie can burn in hell.
So not funny and does not deserve the award.
No. No, I agree with you. I don't know if I was agreeing with you or not, but I'm agreeing with myself that no, the selection of comedies seems a little skewed somehow, and I don't understand it.
And to me, especially the Academy, the Oscars don't separate the music and comedy, but they don't seem to recognize, comedies are an art. I mean, it is, and they are challenging, and just because it's lowbrow doesn't make it, it's actually might be a better editing job or acting.
I couldn't agree more.
So. Do we have any Academy voters out here? Make sure you vote for the interview. I want to thank the Carsey Wolf Center and the Department of Film and Media Studies for sponsoring the event. Thank the Pollock Theater interns. As you see behind the cameras, they're making a great TV show. And talk about coverage, they always have to fix every bad profile shot of me. And they do a wonderful job, so appreciating the editors that will fix this. And of course, Zine Baker coming all the way out and sharing this movie with us and his insights. Thanks, and let's hit some pizza.